Post. Austin's not going to see this, sadly. Oh, well.
No, he will not.
All right, we're live now. I'm just going to give people a minute to kind of get in here before we start. Who would have thought, boys, Connor and Ben making content again? It's been a long time.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it civil.
Yeah, well, try.
Yeah, when's the last time we did we do, I think you and I did the infamous Bears Patriots Super Bowl?
Yeah, the CMAS pick. Yeah, I think that was the last one we've ever announced anything. That was a game too, Jesus.
It'll be tough to top that one.
Yeah, real tough. We'll try that. All right, my thing posted, right? It did, okay.
Austin, are we starting the league soon?
I hope so. You know what? Actually, I'll ask you about that real quick, just while we're waiting for people to get in here. Like, what do you think about the whole waiting for sliders? Or not sliders, waiting for the new scouting update to come out versus starting sooner. Like, what's your just opinion on all that?
Yeah, no, it's the right choice. It's super, super annoying, but it's the right choice. It's the hand that we were dealt. And I think that it's even better because these freaking coverage zones are so bad that the more patches we can get with that being fixed, the better off we are.
Austin's already given his takes. Austin, I'm surprised you saw this. I know you left streams, so welcome to the show. Yeah, I mean, I was talking about it a little bit with Taint last night. Like, my preference would be that we start now, but at the same time, I don't feel like so strongly about it where I'm going to like really argue with people over it, because I do get, defense is in a bad spot right now. It is nice to kind of wait for scouting. So we'll see what happens. Waiting for a product from a company that doesn't ever release anything clean. Yeah, no, all fair points from Austin. All fair points. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Madden 22 cycle preview show. I'm sure this will not be the last one of these you hear, before the cycle starts. I'll probably do this with the Seattleites too, but I'm joined for the first time in a long time by my best friend in the entire league, Ben Tennant. How's it going?
Oh, I am doing good. Doing great. Just got my Kyle Pitts jersey in to match my good friend Connor here. Yeah, so when we're in Vegas, we can just be twinning. Connor, how are you enjoying your extended off season?
I'm doing great, man. I mean, extended off season for sure. It's just good to keep making content. The preseason tournament kind of tied me over for a little bit, but the fact that we're staring down another like month or so is kind of tough. But I'm sure we'll get through it as a league. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you've listened to a cycle preview from myself in the past, you pretty much know this is going to go. Ben and I are going to give our thoughts on users, give our thoughts on divisions, just kind of go through the entire league here, just give our takes. It's not going to be super, super structured. I'm sure we'll touch on kind of like different aspects of different users as we move forward, as we move through this show. But I'm really excited to get going. I just real quick before we start with the AFC East here, what are your just overall, and you can take this whatever direction you want to, what are your just overall takes on Madden 22 so far? With the knowledge that we'll probably have another couple patches before the league starts.
So definitely, I do think the patches will affect this. But my first instinct is that, and we'll still see some in season one as we always do. But I suspect we have less parity this cycle than we've seen in recent memory for a couple of reasons. I think that even more of the game is played pre-snap than even in past cycles. Additionally, I feel like defensive usering both against the run as a user in the pass and even click on usering in pass defense is even more critical to be skilled. I think especially with the click on usering with the SWAT and interception animations, I think that's going to really separate some of the elite defensive players from the poor ones. And with defense already being so difficult, it's going to be pretty obvious which players are more talented defensively. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said for sure, especially about kind of like this pre-snap element of how Madden 22 is going to go. Yeah, I mean, I would love for them to fix the zones. Austin kind of alluded to that. You kind of alluded to that. I'm sure that'll, well, guess can't really say you're sure with EA, but I'm hoping that works out before the mid-October start date here. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I definitely wasn't like as despondent over the gameplay as some of the users were, especially during the preseason tournament. I think one thing that the league's kind of overlooking, and definitely overlooked during the preseason tournament, is sim mode's just gonna be so much different. Everyone was talking about like mediocre QBs making every throw. Ryan Fitzpatrick was throwing dots, Jameis Winston was throwing dots, but I don't think that's gonna be the case when we start the league. I do think that sim mode element's gonna be different, and it sounds like Dan's saying that sim mode plays differently on defense too. So that's why we got to do a practice league, y'all. If we're gonna wait another month, I would love to get some sim mode games in for sure to kind of see how that element plays in. But I'm okay with it. There are some obvious glaring kind of issues with the game that they need to fix, but like as a basis, I like where we're at so far with Madden 22, and I'm excited for the cycle. It's been a long wait that just got a little bit longer, so we'll see how it goes here. Any more thoughts on the game overall before we get to our first division?
No, yeah, just completely agree with everything you said. We can totally jump right in here. Well, we're going AFC East first, right?
AFC East first, yes, sir. And we got the whole breakdown here. Again, thanks to, this is not my PowerPoint. Thank you to Cody for making this for the team selection show. We'll start off first with the Buffalo Bills with Cam, who, had a bit of early cycle success last year with the Jaguars, but ultimately was kind of played second fiddle to Justin in that AFC South. He will take over, obviously, the Buffalo Bills. Made it all the way to the finals in the preseason tournament, and we're all about preseason overreactions here in the Better Cast. Cam with the Buffalo Bills, what are your general thoughts on this user and this team?
Yeah, I have pretty high expectations for Cam this cycle, at least in comparison with past cycles. I don't, necessarily think that he's going to be better than Austin at really any point this cycle, because Austin just puts in so much work into his game, into his craft. But everybody saw the preseason tournament, and we kind of talked about it a little bit before we started up, not to go overreaction too much, but definitely probably the most pleasant surprise in that tournament was Cam making it all the way to I kind of tuned out towards the end. He made it to the championship, right?
He did, yeah. Just played CMAX yesterday.
Wow. So, that's awfully impressive. Even with having a great team, which, there's some young pieces. Definitely there are some older pieces that he's going to have to recycle, but there's enough there with Josh Allen and the core around him to keep Cam's team at a high level here for at least the first few seasons, depending on how he takes it.
We already have our first gifted sub, Taint gifting a sub to CMAS, to CMAS's own channel here. Thank you so much for that, Taint. But yeah, this is a team, of course, the young Alex was able to take to pretty great heights, at least until he met up with Austin most of the time in the playoffs in Madden 21. But I think Cam's going to have a more successful cycle, even though he is in a division with Austin and King. I think Cam's going to have at least in terms of wins and losses in the regular season, I think he's going to be a bit more successful than he was in Madden 21 and Madden 20 previously. Just partially because of the Buffalo Bills roster, and partially because I do think, kind of the fact that the whole game slowed down a little bit, the fact that offense is easier, I do think will help Cam in terms of his ability to just kind of play his preferred West Coast style and not feel like he has to do too much too soon in games. I think we saw that a little bit in the preseason tournament. That was a lot of why he was able to have the success he did, even though, again, I know it was only the preseason, but we'll see what Cam's able to do. It's going to be really interesting. And, Josh Allen, that is a tough quarterback to have. He'll be able to use him the entire cycle. Super high throw power, decent speed. We know how speed kind of rules with the QBs right now, especially with how we saw Lamar Jackson just tear up the entire league in the preseason tournament. So I'm excited for Cam. It's going to be a good one. I expect him to compete for second place with King pretty consistently, even though, King's had more success as a user recently. I move on now to Fern, who, Fern obviously didn't have a ton of success with the Detroit Lions. I want to say he made the playoffs once. I think it was season 1 in Madden 21, but beyond that was kind of a non-factor within the NFC North. But he takes over the Miami Dolphins, obviously, Tua not an incredible Madden quarterback given his, relatively low throw power, but he'll be able to get something going with that young core. Obviously, Jalen Waddle's going to be very helpful. He's got a lot of speed in that wide receiving core, and the defense ain't bad either. Got a lot of young pieces. What are your thoughts on how Fern's cycle is going to go?
Yeah, so I think we're going to learn a lot about Fern very early on in the cycle. And I mean, we know that he's a good user. He's been around long enough where we understand that he's, certainly not a bad user by any means. But especially seeing Cam improve as much as he has, and we know what we have in King, and we definitely know what we have in Austin. The beginning of the cycle, I think, is going to be so crucial because he's got an X factor and a superstar corner to start, which I'm not 100%, but may very well be the only team in the entire league that has that. So considering how difficult pass defense is to begin with, at least here, he's definitely going to have a leg up on everybody else in his division and in the league for that matter. So I think it's very crucial that he capitalizes on that. In addition to that, he does have some young pieces to it included, but a lot of draft pick. I believe they have an extra first round pick next year.
Yeah, you're right.
2023, right. So, I mean, definitely the draft capital is still there. There are some young players, that they have drafted over the last couple of years. Still got some good talent there. Jalen Waddle should be very fun to play with. Pretty jealous of that. He can have a lot of fun with Jalen Waddle.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, I think the first 2 seasons, I would say, are going to have a huge impact on how this Dolphins team is for the rest of the cycle.
Yeah, and also, in terms of his ability to succeed, the first 1 or 2 seasons of the cycle was probably going to be when Austin's at his most vulnerable, and probably when King's at his most vulnerable in terms of, their long-term success in the league. So it's going to be really important that Fern kind of get off to a strong start, because if he doesn't make the playoffs in year 1 or year 2, I just, once those 2 users are more established, I don't see it happening. But, Fern, not a trash user, no slouch, whatsoever. So we'll see what he's able to do. We'll see if he's maybe able to steal a couple from those 2 users that I just mentioned. As the cycle goes on, I'm excited for him. We move on now to the GOAT. Won 4 Super Bowls last cycle. He takes back over his favorite team in the New England Patriots. No Matthew Davis now, but I'm sure he's very excited to get Mac Jones going. The obviously rookie quarterback that he'll be able to continue to build, to continue to develop. What we saw from Austin, I mean, he won a Super Bowl year 2, so I guess I shouldn't even really say this, but like we saw him just get more and more unstoppable as the cycle went on. Obviously, Norman Fletcher was able to kind of put an end to that as the cycle concluded, but those 3 straight rings, seasons 4, 5, 6, it was a really, really just tough ask for anyone to be able to, for anyone who was in his path. Do you expect Austin to have the same type of dominant cycle, or are we going to see a bit of a step back here potentially?
Well, first of all, let me preface it by saying, yes, I do expect him to have maybe not, 4 Super Bowls, but definitely competing for a Super Bowl every single season, right up there. He is, without a doubt, one of the very best users in this league, period. Now, a couple caveats to that. He does, once again, take over this old Patriots roster, and he did such a great job with it last cycle. Mm-hmm. Big part of that was Matthew Davis. He got some great wide receivers. We know about some of the trades that were questionable, but obviously he did a phenomenal job putting this team together. He's got to do it all over again, and this team is even older. Now, on the flip side of that, you talk about the quarterback, you talked about Mac Jones. When I looked at Mac Jones, when we first saw the ratings, and you see the 85 throw power, you look at that and you think, oh my gosh, it's almost unusable, especially for somebody like Austin who likes to throw as much as he does. But come to find out, that may not be nearly as big of a drawback as we thought. 85 throw power, is essentially just as good as 95 with that easy mode, right? So I'm not so much worried about him there. I think Matt Jones, he's going to go ahead and take in Dev, and he's going to become very special. The big question for me is, how does he shape the rest of this roster, especially the defense? I'm not worried about the offense. He'll put the guys in place to make the plays. I'm worried about the defense because, again, I'm going to go back to it over and over. Defense is so difficult this Madden. He's got, obviously, some really good pieces to begin with, Gilmore, McCourty, etc. But, how is that pass rush going to shape up? How is the rest of the defensive backfield? Does he have a go-to linebacker that he can rely on with speed? Because he's got some good linebackers, but they're all like 80 speed or something like that. So, I mean, I definitely trust him to be able to develop these guys. The question is, how quickly does it happen, and can the rest of the league catch up?
Yeah, and another thing with Austin, you're mentioning kind of that old Patriots core, especially on defense. Dev regression's going to probably hit him harder than it will Cameron Fern. The Bills and the Dolphins both have kind of younger cores. Obviously, I with a couple exceptions, especially with the Bills, they got some older pieces on that defense too. But I do think Dev regression could have the potential to maybe hit Austin a little bit harder than it does really anyone else in this division. So we'll see how he's able to counteract that. Obviously a very, very strong team builder, maybe not like the GOAT tier GM that like you are, for example, but I mean, he did just as good of a job in Men 21, Edmonds and Simmons. That was really tough,
Absolutely.
really tough for the league that the trade committee allowed that. But here we are. Yeah, I don't think Austin's winning 4 Super Bowls necessarily, but he'll be right in there. The New York Patriots, the New England Patriots will be a perennial threat every cycle. Sorry, Dan, didn't mean that. The final team in the AFC East here, Kings, New York Jets. I think Zach Wilson's going to take a pounding in terms of like how the ratings are going to be now compared to a month from now, because not a great start to his rookie tenure with the Jets, but we'll see what he's able to do. Obviously, King in the best division in the league last cycle, managed to win that division a couple times. He's a consistent playoff threat, but I believe he only made the NFC Championship game once. Yeah, once. Yeah, I believe so. So, he made the playoffs all the time, but unfortunately usually got either first rounded or lost in the divisional game. You have a lot more experience with King than I do, at least recently. What are you expecting from his New York Jets here?
So a couple things. First of all, going back to the quarterback again, Zach Wilson, you alluded to, just threw 4 picks against Patriots. I expect to see him get dinged for that when the new rosters come out. However, one trend that I've noticed, because I've been keeping an eye on all these rating changes. Having a team like the Texans will do that. But Zach Wilson, and every other quarterback that I've seen so far, namely Matt Ryan, especially after week 1, when they're getting these dings in the ratings, I would say it's about 75% awareness, or on defense, it's awareness and play recognition. So, yes, he may drop down to 74, 73, or even 72 by the time we actually kick off in October. But I don't think that's as dire as it would seem. As long as the throw and the run is still there, the throw under pressure is still there. We know the throw power is there. Not that makes a huge difference. The accuracy is solid. He's got the speed. That's not going anywhere. So I'm not so much worried about him. The question for me is just about everything else, because, I mean, this is not a roster I look fondly upon. And he's got, he actually was one of the better GMs of the last cycle. He really was. But a lot of that was making big splashes via trade. He doesn't really have the trade capital to go out and do that this cycle, at least at the beginning. So I think it's going to be absolutely crucial for him to hit that development for each of these guys. I think King absolutely has the potential to be an AFC contender, much like he was in the NFC last year, knocking on the door of Super Bowls or even potentially making one. But he's going to have to get that roster in the right place. And I think, again, I hadn't mentioned this before, but the AFC is really tough, very deep this year. So he's good enough to beat just about anybody. Really, the only clear-cut user I would say that's better than him in the entire AFC is Austin. Unfortunately, he's in his division. But other than that, King can beat any one of these guys, any day of the week. So very interesting to see where he takes his team.
I am really excited, though, for the Austin King matchup because, the Austin Young Alex matchup looked exciting for a while, and then we would see Young Alex, kind of just admit that Austin was his daddy, and that was really just the end of the cycle for him as far as his ability to beat the Patriots goes. But, King, I don't think would back down from Austin. I think he loves the challenge, and I also think that the type of ball control offense he plays, at least early on before he gets, before he fully does Zach Wilson, like the ball control, run heavy offense he plays will be one that maybe Austin's a bit more vulnerable against. I don't even want to say vulnerable because, Austin has a clear upper hand, but, but he may face a couple more early losses than he would if King was a more pass heavy user, I guess is a more volatile offensive user, I guess is what I mean to say there. But yeah, King, I'm excited to see how he does in this division. Despite the fact that he's with Austin, I'm sure it's a welcome break for him because he's not playing 6 hard divisional games a year. It's 2 or 4. So we'll see. We'll see how he's able to do. And, I expect the Jets to be a pretty consistent playoff threat, especially with that added wild card game. Any final thoughts on the division before we move on?
Yeah, as far as everybody wants to rank this, Austin, King, Cam, and Fern in that order. Just about across the board, it seems like everybody has that same idea. Much like a lot of people slept on King and were ranking him 4th in the NFC West before the last cycle. Mm-hmm. Fern and especially Cam, I think you just can't sleep on, especially if you're King or even Austin for the first couple of seasons. Cam, if he catches these guys kind of, not locked in 100%, he can easily beat them. He really can. So I would say that keep an eye out for Cam to make some surprise noise here in the AFC East, potentially for the entire cycle.
100%, yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how this breaks out. And yeah, I wouldn't just assume that it's going to be that 1 through 4, as you were saying either. Even though that's my predicted 1 through 4, there's definitely, I think, a bit more potential for volatility than people are maybe giving it credit for. That does it for the AFC East. We move on now to the NFC East. This is a really, really interesting division. I'm really excited to talk about this. The return of Chase. He's back and he's with his favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys, partially due to the fact that the ratings guy is a Cowboys fan, and partially due to just the threats they got in real life. They're a tough Madden team. Obviously they've got 2 very, very fast linebackers, fast young linebackers. Dak Prescott's gonna be a problem, especially given how Madden 22 seems to prioritize mobility with your quarterbacks. A lot of weapons in the receiving game. Ezekiel Elliott. Chase is gonna be tough with these Dallas Cowboys, and he is definitely one of the best users in league history to have not won a ring, or at least one of the most successful, throughout better league history. How do you think in this, again, very tough division with Lucky and Little Alex, how do you think Chase is gonna sort himself out here with this cycle?
Yeah, so definitely user-wise, by far the biggest question mark in this division is Chase.
Yeah.
Because we know what he was. Everybody knows what he was. Everybody that was here knows what he was. He is one of the best users in the league, widely considered the best user in the league without a Super Bowl. May not have that claim anymore. There's a few pretty good ones out there. But nevertheless, I expect him to be close, if not all the way back to where he was. Now, the only concern is there are others in his division that even if he gets back to the very high level he was playing at, they may still be better than him, which is really saying something because, top-tier Chase is a Super Bowl contender year in and year out. Mm-hmm. So that's one side of it. The second side of it is we know that Madden loves to bless these Cowboys with ratings, and to be totally honest with you, they already have. Okay, this team won 4 or 5 games last year? I understand Dak's injury, but still, there are some pretty high ratings as I look across the board here at this team. So I suspect that the Cowboys are going to be better this year. They're already off to a good start in real life, that is this season, and they're going to keep getting bumps. And it's not going to be a lot by the time we start in October. I'm going to talk about this, how these rosters are going to change a little bit by the time we start. It's not going to be a significant change, but it's going to be a change, and it's going to be for the better for the Cowboys. So that absolutely works to his benefit. Real question for this roster is there's not a ton of youthful talent. There's a lot of guys in their, mid to upper 20s that are good players, but they're not going to last the entire cycle. Micah Parsons is going to be absolute beast. CeeDee Lamb is going to be an absolute beast. What about the rest? Where's the rest to last for, hopefully at least 6 seasons? I don't know if I really see it. Chase does draft pretty well historically. He does. So I'm not super worried about it, but again, this will be one where it's really interesting to see what direction he takes this roster.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And what you just described with the age factor, I feel like that's kind of been the problem with the Cowboys core for a long time now, as far as Madden goes, is whoever takes them over, has a really, really good setup for the first couple seasons. And then beyond then, it's a bit of an issue. More so now with dev regression turned off. It wasn't as big of a problem back then, obviously, when you got to keep your abilities. But regardless, that's kind of how the deal is here for Chase's Cowboys. I am really excited for him. I'm sure he's fully locked in, especially given the fact that he has the Cowboys. It's going to be a tough battle. Lucky is no slouch. Little Alex obviously is no slouch. We'll get to Nick when we get to him, but obviously, this will be a fun division, I think. And I think Chase is just as capable as anyone, honestly, including Little Alex, of winning this year in and year out. He's shown that throughout his career. We move on now to Lucky. Obviously, you are very, very familiar with Lucky as a Madden user. He takes over the New York Giants, another team that's probably going to get dinged a little bit with their ratings compared to where they were when the when the game first came out. So we'll see what he's able to do here. But he takes over the New York Giants. Obviously, had struggled in the NFC West relative to the other three users with the Seattle Seahawks early on, but by the end there, he was able to, build up a really nice team and made it all the way to the NFC Championship game in Season 7. How do you expect Lucky to do here with these Giants?
Well, for starters, fortunately, the Giants get the Falcons week 3, so that should help with the ratings. But as far as the entire roster is concerned, I'm really actually not all that concerned with it. I don't think it's that bad. It's definitely not good. Don't get me wrong. It's not good. But Saquon Barkley, for starters, is just phenomenal. Even in this pass-heavy game, he's going to be great. You've got some weapons like Evan Ingram and Kenny Galladay that are going to be fun to throw to. And then there are some solid pieces defensively. Nothing, absolutely phenomenal, but, you get a breakout here and there. You could turn it into a pretty good defense. I think that this roster is a little bit underrated because there's a lot of athleticism, even if it's not necessarily the highest overall rated roster. And then as far as the user is concerned, I personally think that Lucky is pretty easily a top 10 user in this league, and potentially even higher than that. He, once again, gets a crazy difficult division with at least one user who's probably better than him, if we're all being honest with each other. But nevertheless, I expect to see Lucky competing more consistently this cycle than he did last cycle. Almost back to his Madden 20 days when he was that gross team from the Bayou and was making the playoffs every year. So I do expect to see Lucky in the NFC postseason every single season this cycle.
The official stance of Bettercast is we love the Bayou from Madden 22. But yeah, I expect Lucky to have a really, really strong cycle. Despite the fact that Lil Alex and Chase are in here, this is honestly probably a division he has more of a chance of being successful in than he did last cycle, I should say. So we'll see if he's able to do what you mentioned is a really good point about the athleticism. He's got a lot of speed in that wide receiving core. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley is going to be a problem, especially with, it seems like power running. It's not back, it's not like Madden 17 levels here, but you can fall forward for sure if you're a power running back, and Saquon's, got as much power as anyone. So we'll see.
And hey,
what's up?
Trucking works again. Trucking works now.
It seems like it, yeah.
Can we get a very, very limited shout out to EA for fixing trucking? It's one thing they actually went out of their way to fix.
Thank you, EA, for that. Just give us our scouting if you could. Yeah, man, Lucky's going to be a consistent threat here. It's pretty much like I kind of see Chase and Lucky as in the same tier in terms of like the amount of long-term success I expect them to have. They'll be in the playoffs, they'll be in the hunt, but do they have that elite kind of Super Bowl contending quality about them? We'll have to see. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying we'll have to see. It hasn't been proven yet necessarily. I don't want to disrespect Nick, and I don't want to give Nick, kind of short shift here within this podcast. So, we'll talk about the Eagles just like we talk about anyone, but this is a tough division for him. Obviously, he won the Hang in Their Butt award for the cycle. He went something like 11 and 101, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly in the cycle, and he is back with these Philadelphia Eagles. A decent roster, but an old roster, a roster that he's gonna have to rebuild, and we'll see how his GM skills are as well as his Madden skills. But heading into a division here with 3 quality users, yeah. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Nick here?
Well, and to be totally fair, I mean, yeah, I know Nick didn't have a good cycle last year, but you're saying, yeah, he's going to struggle in this division. A lot of people would struggle in this
Oh yeah,
division.
no,
A
100%,
lot of
100%.
people. So it's not necessarily, anything against Nick. We know what he is. He's not a phenomenal Madden player. Great guy, Miami brother.
Yes, sir.
It was a pleasure to meet him down there. We had a great time. But as far as his success is concerned, this year he is going to have some pieces put in place to compete in games early on, which has got to be exciting because definitely the way this roster is constructed, the Eagles, there's a lot of older talent on the team. So, and I do think that this is another team that's going to see a few bumps up in their ratings over the next few weeks. I would be shocked if he winds up winning. If he goes 500 in the division in any season, it would be really a shock.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I do think as far as I guess the lower tier NFC users are concerned, definitely Nick has a chance to establish himself as one of the better of that group in the first couple of seasons, which would be a good improvement off of his last cycle for sure.
Yeah, I mostly just feel bad for Nick more than anything. Is like, he deserves, like, for having stuck around as long as he did in Men 21 and, continuing here, like, he kind of deserved an easy division. It's tough that he has to play Chase Lockey and Little Alex a combined 6 times a year, but, it is what it is. He still has, 11 other games to try to get wins every season, so we'll see what he's able to do. You brought up some good points about the Eagles roster. It's one that he can potentially build around, potentially get to a pretty good situation in the later cycle, but we'll see what he's able to do. I hope for his sake that the winning percentage is a little bit higher than it was in Men 21. But, I mean, that's a king, a Miami brother. We love Nick, and I'm rooting for his success all the time. We move on now to the final user in the NFC East. Just had a really, really strong cycle, a cycle that really kind of came out of nowhere compared to Men 20. Little Alex, obviously, with the Washington football team. He was obviously the Buffalo Bills Men 21, and, I know I want a ring. I know Cody won a ring. Little Alex was the second best user in the AFC when you consider the entire cycle. I mean, he made it to the AFC Championship game like 4 or 5 times. It's just the problem was that his father was always in the way. So, I mean, that's no discredit to Little Alex, obviously, because, a whole lot of users lost to Austin last cycle. So it's a testament to how good he is that he was able to consistently make it that far. But he takes over a team that obviously has one of the best young defense cores in the league, especially that pass rush is going to be screaming. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Darren Payne, a whole lot of other guys in Washington. How successful do you expect Little Alex to be? And, can we maybe expect to see him in the Hall of Champions at some point next cycle?
So I fully expect to see him in the Hall of Champions.
Yeah.
If it may or may not exist, that is. But no, he's got obviously a phenomenal defense. Everybody, it's well noted. I don't suspect that the almost said the R word. I don't suspect the football team is going to take a significant step backwards here in the first few weeks. Able to squeak out a win against the Giants in week 2, and I think that the defense is certainly going to be good as far as how the roster is currently constructed in Madden. Obviously there's the question at quarterback, which will quickly be addressed, I think, by young Alex. I wouldn't be surprised if he rocks with Fitz for the first season. It would not shock me because he's had a lot of success with him. But This is flat out one of the, again, going back, he's at the very top tier right there with Austin. For me, little Alex is in that group of the best of the best. I think very highly about Lucky and highly about Chase, potentially very, very highly as well if he gets back to where he was. Even if those two guys are at their best, I still think young Alex is head and shoulders above them, just with his mentality towards perfection and wanting to be as good as possible at the game. I think he's got it down. His only mental breakdown comes against Austin. Everything else mentally, he's got the fortitude that it takes to become a champion. So, yes, I do expect that he joins that prestigious class. What about you? Do you think he gets there?
I do. I mean, I was saying all throughout Madden 21, oh, this is Lil Alex's year. This is Lil Alex's year. As every season would kind of start up. I really thought he would kind of get over the Austin hurdle at some point. It didn't end up happening, obviously, but that's no real discredit to Little Alex because, again, no one else could really figure out Austin last cycle either. So I think that he's, as you were saying, in that very top tier of users, absolutely a top 5 user in terms of, just pure Madden talent in the league. So, and also kind of dedication to keep getting better, dedication to grind. Because good, Madden 20, he was not all that good. So it's really a testament to how much he wants to improve and, just kind of how much he was building himself as a Madden user throughout last cycle. But I think he'll join the Hall of Champions. I think we'll get to another user later on who may be the first, new champion with that Baltimore team, but we'll get to him when we get to him. But yeah, I think Little Alex is in a tier of his own within this division, and that's no discredit to Chase or Lucky. I just think Little Alex is, as you were saying, kind of in his own space in terms of Madden quality there. But we'll see what he's able to do. I guess I'll ask you again. Yeah, any final thoughts on this division before we move on?
Yeah, no, I just I kind of alluded to it when I was talking about Little Alex. I would be very surprised if anyone else wins this division, and at the exact same time, I would also be shocked if Lucky doesn't make the playoffs every single season. Chase, big question mark. He could easily join that group as well. But those two guys specifically, I think are going to do some big things, and I think young Alex really big things this cycle.
Yeah, just kind of not really a random question, but has Chase played anyone else in the league? I haven't noticed Chase really trying to schedule games with people. Has he been even playing this Madden? Do you know?
I saw something the other day. It's my understanding that he hasn't really put the work in yet. There's still plenty of time, so take that with a grain of salt. Yeah. And some guys, for some guys playing this game, doesn't matter what year, doesn't matter what console, what generation, it's like riding a bike. They're just so good at it. They understand the mechanics of the game. They understand the mechanics of football, and they just get it. And Chase is one of those guys, which is why I don't expect to see a significant drop-off. Question is just whether or not he can get back to that elite level that he has been in the past.
100%, yeah. Madden 18, Madden 19 Chase was a problem. Madden 22 will translate, we'll see. But yeah, that's the NFC East. We move on now to what is on paper a stacked division, but we'll see how it translates here as Madden 22 goes. We start off with the preseason champion. Congrats to him, by far the biggest win of his Madden career. CMass with his Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson. I feel like that's all that needs to be said. I expect, unless drastic changes are made to kind of the way this Madden operates in terms of how quarterback mobility works, how the movement works, etc. I will be blown away if CMass doesn't win a ring at some point this cycle. He already, made it to 2 Super Bowls, came about as close as you can come in Super Bowl 30 without actually winning against Austin in that Super Bowl that you and I commentated. But I honestly will be absolutely blown away if CMass does not win a ring. Not to put the kids to death on him, but I just think that's kind of how it is the cycle. I think it's the perfect team fit with the perfect Madden for CMass here. What do you think about CMass, having a lot of playoff experience against him?
Yeah, perfectly said. And he does, like you just mentioned, have a lot of experience under his belt now in this league. He is pretty familiar with just about everybody that's going to be in his division. But ultimately, as you kind of alluded to, it's not about the regular season for CMass. It's about the playoffs. And much like King, he can beat any single person in this league anytime, any day. He can do it. But there's a lot of guys in this AFC. Like I mentioned, it's deep. You've got Austin there, but there's a lot of guys in this AFC that can beat him in the playoffs. So I do think that it's going to be maybe, yes, he has a better chance to win a Super Bowl, or he has a good chance to win a Super Bowl this cycle. But I think just getting to that Super Bowl is going to prove very challenging, especially getting into the playoffs in that division. Just that alone is going to be a challenge. At the same time, being in this crazy division is going to help CMass and everybody else in the division, to prepare for the elite users. They're going to see each other in the playoffs. I have no doubt we're going to see an AFC North and an AFC North probably just about every year in the playoffs at some point. But it definitely will have him and the rest of the division battle tested come that time.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of something that I've been talking about since the early days of the Bearcats back in Madden 17 is, you want those challenges in the regular season to get you battle tested, as you were saying, for the playoffs. But, this is obviously going to help CMAS a lot, having to play Dahooty, play Hero, play Steel 2 times a year each. So we'll see what's able to do with that Ravens team. I don't know. I have not seen anyone be able to contain Lamar yet. Obviously, it's early. Obviously, it was only the preseason. But, again, I'm all about the preseason overreactions, and it's just tough. It's just a very tough offense to stop, especially, you can kind of tell, like, when you're watching CMAS when he's fully locked in, when he's kind of, like, feeling himself offensively. And when he is, he's very efficient offensively. Very, very efficient. And having that bailout option of scrambling for a first down is going to be tough to contain as well. So we'll see what he's able to do. Again, I fully expect him to win a Super Bowl at some point in Madden 22. But we'll see whether he's able to do so, as he said, in that really, really strong AFC. Moving on to Dahooty's Cincinnati Bengals. This is a really interesting user team matchup, I think. We all kind of associate Dahooty with, a very unique offensive scheme, one that's based around the option game, one that's based around, kind of a lot of misdirection, especially, with quarterback mobility. And he doesn't quite have that with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, not slow, but not with the type of speed that Dahooty's used to having either. I'll be really, really interested. Like, Dahooty's one of the users, not to get super off topic, but, like, he's one of the users that I'm most interested to see how he does earlier in the cycle, because, any of these 4 users are capable of, again, winning the division here potentially. And I'll just be curious to see if Dahooty finds himself kind of falling down to 4th place, or if he's fully locked in for this Madden, because I don't get the impression he was fully locked in for Madden 21, even though he beat me in the playoffs. But if he's fully locked in for Madden 22, it's going to be a problem. Again, a Super Bowl champion, the only Super Bowl champion, Better League Super Bowl champion in this division. What do you think here about Dahooty's Bengals?
Completely agree. And where a lot of people have him as kind of a question mark with a not outstanding roster with the Bengals, I think that he has just as good of a chance to win a Super Bowl this year as does CMAS, which I don't think a lot of people would necessarily agree with that. But, I mean, this is a guy who is similar to Chase in that he does come in as kind of a question mark this cycle, but he, as we can see, is putting in the work. So I trust him significantly more. And, a lot of the longtime better leaguers and even people going back into the Madden City days know what it's like when Dahooty is completely locked in, and it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, it's like Austin level scary at points. The biggest question for Dahooty is, how is this, this new game, this new generation going to affect his game style? Because he's gonna stick with it. It's gonna be, it's almost like game planning really for a triple option team in college. It's going to be a totally different look for every team he goes against. The question is whether or not the game is going to allow him, in a sense, to be successful with it. Obviously, when it comes down to it, he's the one making the decisions with the ball. But ultimately, if those decisions, even if they're the right one most of the time, if they're not providing a big enough benefit as, say, somebody with a deep pass offense, then he's going to struggle. What I mean by that is, say, for example, he hits an option, he hits the correct pitch timing or hits the hole correctly, and he gets a 30-yard gain, that's great. If you get a guy that's, a big-time passer and he hits a deep ball for a touchdown, that's totally different. So I think it requires a very, very high level of skill, probably even more so in this Madden. We'll see. Time will tell. But I do think that if he really does grind and put the work in, he could become the best user in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, the triple option is really, really fun to watch. That's why I love watching like the Army-Navy game, every year when it happens, because, when it's flowing, that's just like a really, really fun style to watch, really nice change up. And I like that he's, made it viable in the past in the Better League. Will it be as viable this cycle, as you were saying? We'll see. I suspect that the slowdown of like the game speed is going to potentially hurt Dahooty a little bit more than most in terms of people's ability to prepare for the option game, prepare for the dive, pitch, keep triple option deal that you have. I think it may hurt him potentially, and we'll see if he fundamentally changes things up, or if, as you were saying, he maybe tries to kind of stick with the same deal with his option style offense. But we'll see what he's able to do. I have no experience with peak Dahooty. I have no experience with a fully locked in Dahooty, so I can't even talk about that. But it'll be really, really interesting to see whether he's able to compete in this division and within the AFC as well. We move on now to Hero, and man, you talk about someone whose division fortunes have just completely turned on a dime here. He takes over a Cleveland Browns unit, which, the roster has carried at least one other trash-ass user to a ring before, but he takes over this Cleveland Browns team that's going to really, really help him, especially defensively, but he's going to need all help he can get because, again, he's going against CMS, Dahooty, and Steele. This is not the Madden 21 NFC East anymore. He's going up against some dogs here, so what do you think about Hero's ability to compete in this really, really strong division?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Hero is a known commodity to an extent. We know he's a good user. We know he's not the elite user. He's not at that elite tier, but he's very close to it. The question is how he does in the playoffs, ultimately, because I do think that he is good enough, and certainly the team is good enough, that even despite that division, he should make the playoffs almost every year, if not every year. He really should. But the question is going to become, can he put it together against the top tier users? Because he had trouble doing that last year in the playoffs, which was so weird because he was able to do it during the regular season. Now, this is a totally different game. His game style, maybe his strengths don't necessarily play to the strengths of what we've seen from the game so far. I do think that we'll see an adjustment out of him. I believe he had some pretty good success in that preseason tournament, which bodes well for him. But I have high expectations for Hero, and I think this is just what the doctor ordered for him because he's going to he's going to be playing in this crazy division. It's going to allow him to sharpen iron with iron, or whatever the expression is. He's going to get better, flat out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to, for sure, because he's going up against some really, really strong competition. I'm never going to talk down on Hero because he bodies me every time we play. I don't know, it's just like a bad matchup for me. But I do think that he potentially, kind of like as the cycle moves forward, as CMAS continues to figure things out with the ultra-mobile Lamar Jackson, as Dahooty maybe adjusts his offense, continues to figure out Madden 22. I do worry a little bit about his staying power in the AFC North. I think his best ability to compete may be those first couple seasons, but that's no disrespect. Obviously, he did, despite the fact that he's in a horrible division, he made the playoffs, I think, every year last cycle. He's able to have some success, at least in the regular season, against top-tier competition. So we will see. I don't know. I don't necessarily see a Super Bowl run in him, per se, but I do think that he'll be, despite the division, I do think he'll be in the playoffs more often than not, as you were saying, especially, again, with that Browns team. So we will see. The final team of the AFC North here, Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, another user to get their favorite team. My suspicion early on is that Steele may struggle a little bit, and that's no disrespect to Steele's user whatsoever. I just say that in terms of the roster to user fit. That Carolina Panthers team that he had in Madden 21 was very low-key, one of the most stacked defenses in the league, at least as far as speed goes, and as far as he had some really, really strong abilities as well, especially in the coverage game. But I am interested to see how he's able to compete, especially with CMS and Dahooty. My suspicion is that it may be kind of tough sledding for him, at least at first in that division. But, tell me if you agree or disagree on that.
Oh, no doubt. He comes in with a strong defensive roster in a game that defense is almost non-existent. I mean, he really, you talk about getting screwed by, luck of the draw there. He didn't have it. Now, I will say this. I think very highly of Steele. Similarly to how I feel about Lucky, I do think that he is. He's one of the better users in this league that doesn't get the credit that he deserves because I think his just skill in Madden, in the game itself, is top 10 easily. That being said, he's got an incredibly tough draw with this division. The roster's not in a great place to begin with. Yes, I think he's going to struggle at the gate a little bit, but when I say that, struggling for Steele would be going like 11-6. So I still think that he is going to make the playoffs more often than not. Could easily make it every single season. Hell, we could see multiple seasons where this entire division makes the playoffs. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. Nevertheless, I hope that he's able to build this roster the way that he wants it and not hang on to some of these pieces that are his favorite players for a little bit too long.
For sure, yeah, and that's the classic trap when you get your favorite team is, you know, you have like kind of a personal connection to the players, but you got to be willing to make the hard decisions as a GM, and we'll see whether Steele's capable of making those decisions, or I guess desires to make those decisions. I don't know. As far as the whole division goes, I guess like it sounds like maybe we see this a little differently. I do see this as CMS's division very early on. I guess that's more coming from the perspective of I just haven't seen peak Dahooty. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, you know, I hear you when you say that it's close to peak Austin. You know, that's definitely kind of makes me raise my eyebrow a little bit in terms of his ability to compete in the Super Bowl. But I just personally haven't seen it, so my tendency would be to lean towards CMS, especially again given that he has Lamar Jackson. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on this division before we move on?
So I don't want to just give throughout this division to CMS. I do think if you had to pick a favorite, it would be him. But I would give him maybe a 40% chance of winning this division, at least, you know, season one. Mm-hmm. And depending how the rest of the cycle goes, probably around that number for the entirety of the cycle. Just because these other three guys, team aside, these are three really, really good users. And if CMS slips up just even a little bit, I mean, one of these guys is going to take the charge every single year, if not multiple. You could very easily see the favorite in CMS finish third or fourth in the division, and it would not surprise me at all. It really wouldn't. You could see Steele, who right now probably is the least likely to win the division season one. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him win it division season one, or any other season for that matter, just because he is that good of a user. I do think that, like I said, I think that Dahooty is the biggest question mark here because I do think he could be at the very top, and I do think he could be, you know, third or fourth place in this division pretty easily. I think of all the teams, Hero is probably the safest bet to be successful year in and year out. He's got a great team. He is a great user. He knows what he wants to do, and he does a pretty good job of executing it way more often than not. All in all, I think as far as Super Bowl candidates, any one of these guys could get to the big dance. I could see probably, well, you know what? I'm just going to say, if any one of these guys won a Super Bowl, it wouldn't be a huge shock to me. It would be a surprise, but definitely not a huge shock.
I'd be kind of shocked if Hero Austin won one, honestly, but yeah, go ahead and finish.
No, and that's, I mean, it really wouldn't. He's got a great team, and he's a good user. I know he's had the bugaboo in the playoffs in the past, but I want to believe that that's more just bad luck than anything. I'd love to see him put it behind him, and I think he will. But, you know, he's got to get out of this division first.
For sure, yeah. That'll be a tall task for him. King just getting toxic about Hero Austin. CMS saying Ben refuses to buy into the CMS hype train that Connor is the conductor of. You're damn right, CMS. I'm leading that bad boy off a cliff if I have to. That is the AFC North. Obviously, it's going to be a really, really fun division to watch year in, year out. Probably one of the most fun in terms of the unpredictability. So we'll see what happens here. We move on now to the NFC North, and this is an interesting one too, and that's kind of the great thing about Madden 22. The great thing about how the team reveal line is, I don't think there are a ton of like dog divisions in terms of predictability. I think the only one is, you know, the NFC West, which we'll get to at the very end. Cody's running that bad boy, you know, not to spoil it, but we have Alex's Chicago Bears. You know, he is again paired with the team, with his favorite team, with the team that he had all that success with. back in Madden 17, and we'll see what he's able to do. Obviously had a very, very disappointing cycle last cycle with the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought he was going to win multiple Super Bowls. He didn't even win multiple playoff games, so it's kind of tough from his end, but he takes over Chicago Bears. I'm sure he's hungry. I'm sure he's reinvigorated. How do you think Alex's Madden 22 is going to
go? So I think he's going to have a lot of success. I think that Alex, we can all pretty confidently say, is no longer in that elite tier, which he was in for quite some time. I don't think he's in the elite tier. He's on that next level. I think he's a playoff team. Should be every year. Frankly, it should be.
Yeah.
If I were to bet, I'd say he probably misses once or twice. But the sky's the limit. I mean, he doesn't have a great team. He's going to be able to build it. They finally don't have to worry about having draft picks. They've got all of them, I think. And he's got the young – oh, no. Of course, they traded away for Justin Fields. What the hell am I thinking? I mean, I do think that he is going to be a playoff contender. It's just the roster is not great. So will he be able to compete, with the really good rosters combined with really good users early on? Probably not, at least on a consistent basis. But I absolutely think he's a playoff team season one and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of the rosters are all that great in this division, at least in terms of like long-term viability. Like they're all kind of they're all kind of rosters, that you have to kind of build up from the studs at some point during the cycle. So I don't know if that'll hurt Alex as much as it would in like other divisions necessarily, but yeah, I agree with you that he's no longer the elite tier. I am interested. I mean, Justin Fields is going to be a problem too, is the only thing. And like, I know that, I say that about someone who had Patrick Mahomes in Madden 21 and wasn't able to do a whole ton with him, even though that passing offense is pretty solid that he was able to put together. But I do just think, again, unless there's like fundamental changes made in Madden 22, I think that's going to be a huge, huge advantage for him. The fact that he has Justin Fields, the fact that he's, a rookie, he gets to have a quarterback on that rookie scale for the first 4 seasons of the cycle, that's going to really help him build other areas of the team. So I do think Alex is put in a pretty good position despite the fact that his roster isn't so good as you were saying, but he's got Dan in his way. Dan is going to be way stronger than anyone was in his division last cycle. Sorry, Morty, I love you, but it's true. And then Boz is very capable as well. Boz made a run all the way to the NFC Championship game at one point last cycle, so he's got that in him too. So we'll just have to see it with Alex. Would it blow me away if he made a Super Bowl? No, but it would surprise me just based on, I guess, the rest of the NFC and also the user team pairings here. So we'll see what he's able to do. Boz's Detroit Lions, this is a tough roster to have. Not a ton of pieces you can work with. They just traded away Matthew Stafford, obviously. Not that Matthew Stafford's some stud Madden quarterback, but, Jared Goff's definitely a downgrade. And, whoops. Accidentally muted. We're good. But we're just going to have to see what he does as far as the rebuilding goes. I think this is going to put his GM skills to their fullest test here. How do you see Boz doing in this division?
Yeah, so I'm actually not that worried about Boz, even with this horrible roster, and it is. Don't get me wrong. But he has got the draft capital, of course, to help him moving forward. He is in a position with the young talent that is on this roster and the draft picks put in place to be trending upwards for the entire cycle. He can absolutely do it. I think that Boz is one of the most underrated users in the entire league, even after all the success that he had last cycle. And I could easily see him competing and winning this division on a regular basis. He's got, some other good competition in the division, but nevertheless, even with a bad roster, I think especially to begin with a bad roster is not the end of the world because there is a little bit more parity to begin with. People still trying to figure out the game, so maybe the players not being as good doesn't create as big of an impact. That bodes well for him, but I really do. I expect him to compete season one, even with this roster being where it's at now. What do you think?
I compete season one is interesting. Just based on, obviously, Dan is playing this game about as much as anyone, despite the new job. Congrats, Dan, on that. But, he's going to be lethal season one. I do think Alex is really motivated. I guess I don't see it as much. I guess early on in the cycle with Boz, again, based on where that roster is, especially with the complete, lack of offensive threats they have. But we'll see. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me to see him like win the division necessarily, but I definitely see him as kind of a pretty clear third place behind Dan and Alex. I guess we can talk about that when we talk about the entire division at the end, but he's going to have an interesting go. But I do think we'll see him make at least a couple playoff runs for sure throughout the cycle, despite the fact that he, again, is in a division with two other solid users here. We move on now to Tim, who, again, much like Nick, is kind of in that clear fourth place, but, he's still... I mean, shit, he beat me once, so, I guess I can't really talk, and he did get a couple other nice wins last cycle, so, he's not completely incapable of beating, quality talent. It's just about stringing it together throughout the season. Takes over his Green Bay Packers. They did keep Aaron Rodgers, which I'm sure he loves, because he loves Aaron Rodgers more than I've seen anyone love any player just in my life. It's wild. But he takes over this Green Bay Packers team, obviously pretty old, not a ton of, youth talent that you can build, although there's a little bit, in that secondary on the defensive side. How do you see it going for Tim?
All right, so I'll preface this by saying that Tim did beat me in the preseason tournament. He had a great comeback win. He hung with Cody in the following game. He, as far as that, I guess you would put him in the lower tier user category. As far as those users are concerned, he's in the upper portion of that. Absolutely. I do think in most other divisions, he would be fighting for second or third. In this division, he gets three really good users that he's going up against. That's going to be tough. Now, enter Aaron Rodgers, easy mode quarterback, gunslinger. What does he do with that? Because that is a huge advantage that he has on the rest of the division and most of the league, for that matter. It is an enormous advantage. So I do think that we are going to see some noise out of him season one. Wouldn't expect or wouldn't shock me at all to see him knock off one of these, better, in finger quotations here, one of these better users, if you will, in his division a couple of times. Wouldn't shock me at all. I think he could actually make a pretty good run in the first season and get to double-digit wins. Totally has the resources to do that with his roster. At the same time, if he doesn't do it season one, don't expect it for the rest of the cycle, because the other teams are just going to get better. His team is only going to regress from here on out for the most part. He does have some good players to build around for the future, no doubt about that. There are some good players in the Packers, but not really the long-term skill that he's looking for.
Yeah, I kind of see Tim, at least early on in the cycle, while he does still have that gunslinger, I kind of see him having a similar success level to how Fern was for most of the Madden 21 cycle, where he's not going to make the playoffs. He's not really, even going to sniff the playoffs, but he'll be good for a couple upsets every season, just based on if he's able to, feel good offensively, he's able to get that, gunslinger passing game going. It's tough to beat. And, he's not he's not a complete trash can. He's capable of moving the ball, if things are going well. So we'll see for Tim. I do think he'll, as you were saying, knock off a couple of users every season that you maybe wouldn't expect. But it's just a tough division. Again, Alex Bowes, Dan, it's not going to be easy for him. So we'll see what he's able to do. I'm just glad that he got the Packers, because that'll kind of motivate him to stick around, even if he takes some losses. Move on now to the final user, our defending Super Bowl champion, Dan Reno, and he takes over the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, this is not a team, I fully expect him to draft a quarterback season one, kind of similar to Norman Fletcher, but I don't think this is a team that he'll be able to immediately compete with for Super Bowls with, but I do regardless think that, obviously Dan's going to be very capable of beating anyone he plays, either in the regular season or in the playoffs. It's just kind of a tough start for him in terms of how the basis of the team is, but how do you think Dan's cycle is going to go?
Yeah, so this is kind of similar to the NFC East in that I've kind of spoken highly of all these other users. And even despite that, Dan is head and shoulders above all of them. He is one of those elite classes of users. I absolutely think he competes for a Super Bowl season one. I would actually put him as the NFC favorite for season one. He has got the weapons at wide receiver and tight end for that matter, in Herb Smith. And then, of course, he's got Dalvin Cook, who he could even potentially look to trade if he decides it doesn't fit his style perfectly. Question will be at quarterback comes sim mode. Does he roll with Kellen or is it Kellen Mond? Yeah, Kellen Mond. I think he probably will. And I personally would like to see him stick with that as long as the throw power isn't adjusted to have a huge drop off between Kellen Mond's 88 throw power and, the mid to upper 90s. As long as the throw power is not a huge deal. Dan's dealt with the accuracy issues before, which Mon doesn't have great accuracy. But, if he decides that he wants Mon to be the guy, Mon's going to be outstanding by season 3. Mark my words, he's going to be like superstar at least, potentially X Factor, and could be the real deal. Now, like you said, he may just totally surprise us all and decide to go quarterback. Really, maybe, I guess not surprise us all, but decide to go quarterback in the first draft and let that be his guy. May very well do that. But especially since I think he's going to have so much success in season 1, he's going to be picking at the end of the draft or at the end of the first round. And I don't think whatever options are going to be there are going to be that much better than what he has in Mon, personally. I don't know. What do you think? Is Mon the guy?
I personally, and, Dan, if you are interested in tipping your hand at all, I know he's watching this, so let me know what you think of the chat. But I personally don't think Kellen Mond is the guy. I think we're maybe underestimating just how bad the accuracy issues are going to be under the, in sim mode. We don't feel it as much in the preseason tournament because damn near any quarterback can be successful in comp mode, it seems like, in the preseason tournament. I mean, again, Jameis Winston was throwing succulent dots out there the entire time, but I just don't see it. I think there's going to be a point where, and I especially say this because I think Dan's going to be motivated to have an AI quarterback just like he did with Norman Fletcher and potentially get him into the Hall of Fame. I think that is a potential motivating factor for him is, to see that level of success that he had with Norman Fletcher with a drafted quarterback. Again, as you were saying, he's going to have to either. Well, I also forget, was Norman Fletcher even like a lottery pick? Because I feel like he drafted Norman Fletcher like either pretty late in the first round or maybe even been like early second round. This is just like off the top of my head. I don't know, but we'll see. Dan's saying we'll evaluate every position on the field. Love that out of you, Dan. The classic coach speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, long-winded, but I say that to say I think he's going to draft a quarterback either season 1 or 2. We'll just have to see, what's out there. Also, the drafts are supposed to be a little better, so we'll see how that goes as far as the depth.
True.
But final thoughts on this division as a whole.
Yeah, so again, I do think that Boz is going to surprise some people. I think he could pretty easily go get second place in this division. Not a knock against Alex. You alluded to Justin Fields is going to be a lot to handle. I think very highly about Boz and how he's improved himself as a player. I do think Dan runs away with this thing every season. And I do think he's also the favorite in the NFC as of right now. Him and Little Alex and Cody are those 3 guys that I expect to see competing for Super Bowls out of that conference. For the rest of it, I don't know about Tim. We'll see. Season 1's going to be huge. That's his big opportunity. But definitely, if I were to pick a strong playoff candidate, it's Dan, and that's pretty much all that I like to make a deep run, at least season 1.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you that Dan's the favorite. I do think Alex has the potential to potentially make a deep playoff run, if he's able to kind of get everything lined up, especially with the fact that, I don't think the NFC is quite as deep as the AFC necessarily in terms of playoff talent, but he has the capability, but we'll see what he's able to do. Again, that he's got to kind of wash the stink of the Madden 21 cycle off of him, so we'll see what he's able to do. And
for sure.
Boz, I maybe wouldn't give him quite as much respect as due in terms of I think more often than not he's going to miss the playoffs, but he'll absolutely make it at least once or twice, and he's capable of winning any game he plays, so we'll see what he does there. And then Tim, again, thank God for the gunslinger. That's all I'm going to say. Move on now to the AFC South, and Ben, I'm just going to let you go off on the Houston Texans. I don't even have an intro for this. Just go. What are your thoughts here?
Well, it's going to be fun. Only downside is that it seems like this cycle could be a shorter amount of seasons, so not the best cycle to choose to do a rebuild. Nevertheless, going to be some roster turnover. Uh, don't expect to see a lot of the same players that you see now on the roster, even come season two. There are a few guys that we like, a few trade pieces that will look to move. But all in all, this is a complete rebuild scenario around Deshaun Watson. So I'm really excited about it because I love playing with Deshaun. I'm actually a fan of his, even despite all of the rumors, and we're going to just call them rumors. But nevertheless, I'm really excited. I've had fun playing with them. And I think that the defense is a little bit better than right now it's getting credit for. I think that the roster will improve a little bit as they've shown that they're a real football team and not just some joke that goes out there on Sundays, but or Thursdays in this week's case. But yeah, no, it's gonna be big changes definitely, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. Everybody knows I love to do the off season stuff, so certainly we'll have plenty of challenges and opportunities to do that.
It'll be really, really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, now that we've played Madden 22, I guess think more highly about, I guess, your ability to succeed at least early on with this Texans team than I did heading into it. You know, like I thought the roster was going to like really hurt you, I guess, more than it seems like it will now, based on the fact that it seems like there's some defensive pieces or some defensive positions where the studs don't necessarily matter. Where is the pass rush, for example? And then I do think that in this division, despite the fact that Taint's been grinding, Cloud, it sounds like, has been grinding on Mutt, I do think you'll be able to be pretty competitive early on. It's just going to be, you'll be in the playoffs every year, most likely. It's just an issue of, once you make the playoffs again in that stacked AFC, where you're going to see a lot of those guys from the AFC North. You're going to see Austin. You're going to probably see King. You're going to see some other guys. It's just going to be about your ability to compete with them. And, you do start with a disadvantage with your roster. So being able to overcome that's just going to be the thing. Before I go to Taint, do you have any more like thoughts on that or just anything else here for the Texans?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The AFC is super, super deep. So it'll be a challenge to have the playoff success that I've had over the last two cycles. Don't necessarily expect it, but at the same time, we're always gunning for it. It's a different mentality in the playoffs, and I have obviously got plenty of experience there. And I don't think that is should go unnoticed. Whenever that time does come.
For sure. Moving on now to Taint's Indianapolis Colts. He was it didn't necessarily show up a whole ton in the wins and losses, but I do think he improved as the Madden 21 cycle went on, and he's been playing a lot of this Madden. He's been grinding. He's been trying to get better. I'm not sure there's a user, frankly, as far as like people of Taint's quality go, that is more motivated to get better than Taint is. Again, Taint, Miami brother, we all love him in this league. How do you think, how successful do you think he's going to be with this Indianapolis Colts team?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. He is absolutely driven to improve. I do think, again, this is one of those, he got the short end of the stick with how this game is playing, because he does not have the weapons that it really requires to be super successful offensively. He just doesn't have them.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor will be a fun piece, but the running game, I'm not sold on it being as consistently reliable as it was in the last several cycles. I want to believe in Taint, even with him being in my division. I really want to believe in him, but I don't.
Well, I do know this. If Taint ever makes the playoffs, the whole league's watching that game. The whole league's pulling for him, pretty much no matter who he plays. But
no doubt.
I do think Taint's gonna be more successful than he was in Madden 21. I do think at some point that all the work he's put in kind of has to pay off in terms of the results. I do agree with you. It's kind of, I shouldn't say he got screwed over, because there are a lot of rent first users in this league, including me. But he did kind of get the short end in terms of how this Madden plays. Even though he'll probably be more successful offensively than was in Madden 21. So we will see as far as he goes. I honestly would not like, it would not shock me if you made the playoffs at some point. And that's obviously no disrespect to you, no disrespect to anyone in this division. I'm not even saying he wins the division, but I'm just saying, like, with how much better I do think he is getting, I just could see it happening at some point, if you get the right matchups and he goes on a run. So we'll see. Yep. I'm excited for Taint. I'm excited for the cycle he's going to potentially have. Kooks, Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, the Jaguars, a complete mess in real life. They may go for the season. It honestly wouldn't shock me at this point, unless Trevor Lawrence just hard carries them. But I don't know how much Kook's been playing. I've seen him in the chat a couple times, but I don't get the impression he's playing a lot. This team is not going to help him out. They're not going to do a ton of favors, other than the fact that he does have a really strong rookie quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. It's just not a lot to go off of, and he is in a division with, potentially 3 quality users here, and yourself, Taint, and Cloud. So how do you think Kook's going to do with his Jaguars?
Yeah, so the Jaguars were a pretty sought-after team here in the team draft. I believe they were one of the highest among...
Number 5, yeah.
Were they? Okay, there you go. There you have it. And a big part of that was Trevor Lawrence. I do think we're going to see some rating regression here for him before we start the cycle, but nothing to impact him long-term for the BL cycle. In my opinion, he's still going to be, star dev, which is kind of a shame, really. But nevertheless, we're seeing exactly why he's only star dev play out right in front of our eyes in real life. So I don't think that this roster is as bad off as it would seem. The sky is not falling as far as the cycle is concerned. It is in real life, because who knows what's going to happen with Urban Meyer and the rest of the Jaguars. They are definitely going to take some dings as far as ratings, but a lot of their players are young enough where it shouldn't impact Kook too much here for the cycle. Now, as far as he is concerned as a user, he did take me down once in the playoffs last cycle, which I know everybody loved. But he was very on and off, mostly off. I don't know how locked in he is personally. It will be really interesting to see season 1 because I think that's probably his best chance to make the playoffs, even with his roster being young and devable. I think with the state that my roster's in and Taint getting better, but maybe not quite there yet, he could pretty easily challenge for first or second in this division season 1 if he's all the way there. If he's not, it's going to be a long cycle for him because, obviously you have myself who's been around for a while, and then you've got Cloud, who is a pretty proven user as well in his own right. So could be pretty tough, especially if Taint improves. Could be a pretty tough cycle for him.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like weird for me to say this in a division with Taint, but I do honestly see Kook as kind of the pretty clear 4th place here. And, obviously Kook, did make the playoffs, I think, twice throughout the cycle, played you and both of them beat you once. But I don't know. Part of it is just having not seen him play at all this Madden. I guess I don't really know what he's looking like, but I think another part of it is I cannot just underestimate just how bad that roster is. I do get that you're saying that they do have a couple young pieces out there, but I think it's just really, really tough for him to build. And, unlike you, the best GM in the league, I don't necessarily know if he has the GM skills to take that Jaguars roster to where it needs to be. And apparently Trevor Lawrence is superstar, not star dev.
Is he? Well,
yeah, apparently. So that's an added step in his favor. But regardless, without gunslinger, pass lead, a couple other abilities, don't matter a whole ton. So we'll see what he's able to do here. Move on to the final user. Welcome back, Cloud, one of the better league OGs. He takes over the Tennessee Titans here. Obviously, former Super Bowl champion, but that was a long, long time ago. Had some success with the Arizona Cardinals early on in the NFC West in Madden 21, but ultimately wasn't long for that cycle. He left, I want to say either, I think it was mid-season 3, if I remember correctly. That feels right. But how do you think Cloud's going to do? Obviously, your former division mate.
Yeah, so again, starting up a division with Cloud, and he really had my number at the beginning of last cycle before he left. I think pretty highly of Cloud. He is a BL lifer, even despite leaving. for a little while there last cycle. Everybody knows I got a lot of confidence in myself, but I can admit that Cloud's probably the favorite, if only for roster's sake, because he's in a great spot to begin this cycle. Certainly some question marks moving forward, a lot, actually. But there are good young players on this roster, no doubt, that will be around for the cycle, or at least for several years. I think the biggest question mark for him is Derrick Henry. Obviously, we know Derrick Henry's a great player. He's got the freight train X factor, which if he can get that, absolutely changes the game. But how does the run game really translate? I mean, I know, we said trucking works, and he's obviously a great back, but how many times can you just slam Derrick Henry ahead as you're getting torched in pass defense and giving up touchdowns left and right just because that's the way the game is constructed? It's going to be, really difficult to stick with that. At least it would be for me and for a lot of pass first users, especially in this cycle. And I know Cloud likes to throw the ball around a little bit. He's still got plenty of guys to throw to, especially at the beginning of the cycle. But, it'll be really interesting to see how he handles Derrick Henry if he decides to trade him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's got a couple deep threats. A.J. Brown's going to be tough, and we know the Cloud's a capable passer, as you were saying. Saw that with Cole McDonald, the former Miami quarterback, or not Miami, Hawaii quarterback last cycle. But, Cloud, it's going to be interesting, and this is kind of like a big difference between Madden 21 Madden 22. They were saying, more so than any other cycle, it's just so tempting this cycle. Once you go down by 2 touchdowns, you never run the ball again, right? You just pass, try to get those deep crosses going, try to get those route concepts going, and this is coming from someone who, I want to run 30 times a game. Like that, like my ideal game is, about a 2-to-1 run to pass ratio, because not the best passer in the world, if y'all haven't noticed, but it's just so tempting, again, as you were saying, with the way this game is constructed, to go pass heavy, and it may minimize his ability to utilize Derrick Henry, as you were saying, despite the fact that he's the best power back in the league in real life, and potentially one of the best in Madden. So we'll just have to see how it goes for Cloud. I do see you as the favorite despite the roster, but I would not be shocked at all if Cloud wins it. I'd be kind of shocked if Taint won it, but if he's at least competitive in the division, it wouldn't shock me. And Kook, I honestly see as the pretty clear 4th place, but that's less out of disrespect to Kook and more out of I just haven't seen him play this Madden at all. And given how much you've been grinding, how much Tate and Cloud have been grinding, that just kind of puts him in a deficit for me early on. But again, we got a month left, so we'll see. Any final thoughts on your division here before we move on?
Yeah, I don't think it's ridiculous to say that this is a 2-horse race. Yeah. Between Cloud and myself. I love Tate, I really do. But I'm not sold on him. And I hope I'm proved wrong. I really do. Because he's a great guy and everybody would love to see him succeed. But I would be very surprised if it's anyone other than Cloud or myself, first or second for the entire cycle.
Yeah. I'm sold on him having an improved cycle compared to last, and I'm sold on him getting a couple upsets here and there. But am I sold on him winning the division now? It's you and Cloud in that regard, just in terms of the consistency. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. That'll be one of the more interesting 2-horse races probably in the league. And, if Taint can shock us both, then maybe 3-horse races. We will see. Moving on now to the NFC South, my division, your beloved Atlanta Falcons. Finn takes them over. I have never seen Finn play a Madden game, I don't think, even, during the brief time when he was here at Madden 21. But I do know he has a lot of Madden knowledge. That's very obvious in the way he talks about it in his broadcasts. He has a really good sense of kind of just how the game operates, how the different, zones work, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of intimidates me, and Gator Great Kyle Pitts intimidates me as well. He is a beast in this Madden, if y'all haven't already seen. How do you see, Finn a bit of an unknown, at least in the Bear League? How do you see Finn's cycle going with your Atlanta Falcons?
So I'm not completely sold on Finn as much as I would love to be with him taking over the Falcons, but I played him a couple times in the last cycle when he was the Packers, and everyone wants to say, oh, he inherited a bad team. He did not inherit a bad team. That Packers team was damn good. Okay, for a team that really didn't have a whole lot of success last cycle, that was a damn good Packers team. It really was. Um, that being said, wipes the slate clean, gets his hands on a brand new roster here. It'll be interesting because I think he's got maybe the biggest breakout potential of any user in the entire Beta League for this cycle. I could absolutely see him catapulting himself into near the top tier of users, just with the, like you mentioned, the knowledge he has and the work that he puts in. I saw it firsthand in MLB The Show. I don't think I've ever seen anybody put in work like that on any game that he put in on MLB The Show. Obviously, this is a different game, and it kind of comes back to what I alluded to with Chase. Some guys have the instincts, some guys don't. He understands it. If he can put the understanding with the instincts, you got a scary, scary user with a team that has maybe not the greatest potential in the short term, but long term, he could turn them into something really, really special.
Yeah, I mean, I think for every team in this division, part of it, and ironically, I'm kind of like parroting what Finn was saying during the selection show, but part of it's going to be, the ability to find a long-term quarterback. Obviously, Tom Brady won't be around for the majority of the cycle. Jameis Winston, no. Sam Darnold, no. Matt Ryan, again, won't be around majority of the cycle. So we'll see. We'll see what he does.
Felipe Franks.
Hey,
Felipe Franks will be.
man does have a cannon. Accuracy. Listen, I've dealt with too many Felipe overthrows in real life, ladies and gentlemen. But I have full respect for Finn as a user. Again, that's why I've literally never seen him play. But I know he got a couple nice results in Madden 21. He beat Little Alex at one point by like 4 touchdowns in a game that Little Alex I think needed for playoff seeding. So that kind of scares me a little bit. It seemed like a bit of a fluke, at least based on his other results. But yeah, I'm excited to be. I'm mostly just excited to be in a division with, a fellow content creator, someone who has awesome streams, someone who seems like a quality, just human being, it'll be fun to get the Saints Falcons rivalry going with him. So we'll see what he's able to do. I'll be rooting for him every game other than 2 times a year. So we'll see how it goes. Morty, fellow Seattleite, takes over the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the best, the best user in Better League history if you only take the first 2 cycles into account. Since Madden 18, he hasn't been able to do a ton in terms of playoff success. He's still been a pretty solid regular season user. He still has that Madden knowledge, but it's just kind of fallen off a little bit. Last season with the Raiders, he was able to make the AFC Championship once, and then other than that, I am not sure if he made the playoffs again after that. He may have made it once, but I know definitely the majority of the time he didn't make it. How do you think Morty's going to do here with this Panthers team?
Yeah, so I have pretty high expectations for Morty. And I say pretty high because I think the days of him being the dominant user are gone and behind us. But he takes over a team with some weapons and some youth and some flexibility as far as the cap and his draft and all this. He can build this team however he likes. It's not. It's very different from the Patriots and the Raiders, where he's going to go with his guys, and then he's going to. No, I would like to see Morty be a little bit more active as a GM this cycle, and I think if he is, he can build a almost a steel-like team. Maybe not necessarily so defensively minded, but nevertheless a team that has weapons all over the place on both sides of the ball. It can really hurt you with some of their star players. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is going to be extremely dangerous, even in this Madden that is so, the run is maybe not run first for most people. He is outstanding, as we all know, in the pass game, so that bodes very well for Morty. Question is the quarterback, Sam Darnold. I can bet money will not be the quarterback for the Panthers for very long, especially being that, he's a former Jet, and we all know Morty's a big Patriots fan. I'm not holding my breath on Sam Darnold being there all cycle either. But nevertheless, I mean, if he can get whatever he wants in there, quarterback, and can stick with it, who knows? Maybe it'll be, what's the guy's name? drawing a blank now, which is sad because he's been Morty's quarterback for what 2 or 3
Oh
cycles
yeah,
now.
yeah. Shoot. Yeah,
Tyree,
Tyree
right?
Jackson. Yeah,
Yeah, Tyree Jack. There we go, Tyree Jackson. Yeah, no, who knows? Maybe he brings him back. I think he's a tight end this year. Nevertheless, plenty of weapons, plenty of youth. This team is in a very good position, I think, moving forward for Morty.
for sure. I think this is maybe one of the few defenses in the league that'll actually be able to stand up a little bit early on. They got a lot of speed. That linebacking core is really really tough. Secondary, has got some pieces as well. Dante Jackson. That was Morty said in his interview in the team selection show, that was his biggest motivation, was to never be stuck with just such an unusable defense as he was with the Raiders last season or last cycle. So, good for him. He got a very, very strong defense. Obviously, I love Morty. I root for his success always. We'll see what he's able to do with this Panthers team. I expect every game I have with him to be a battle. He's very, very capable, especially when he's fully locked in. I know that firsthand. So we will see what he's able to do. I honestly would probably have him as the season 1 division favorite, not to be like overly humble, but I think that's kind of where I'm leaning so far with this division. Your favorite team here, the New Orleans Saints. Shout out to Bernard from the Bayou. I take them over. I'll give my thoughts real quick, and then you can give yours.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't. I'm a little salty about like how the pass rush is, because I was really really excited to use Cameron Jordan, and he's just gotten completely bagged up in like every game I've played so far. I think I've played a bunch of games, and I don't think he's had more than 1 sack in a game yet. Most of the time, he just isn't even a factor. So that is a bit upsetting, but I'm excited to use this team. Michael Thomas is going to be a problem. He's obviously not the fastest, but I like his route running abilities. I like his quick cuts. That's something that I was missing a little bit with the Browns once I traded away OBJ. So we'll see what he's able to do there. And, I'm excited to be in this division. Obviously not the same as the Browns were. This is not the same stacked roster that I had. So my ability to win a Super Bowl is nil, I would say, with this team. But regardless, I hope to be in the playoffs more often than not. What do you think here?
Well, I certainly wouldn't put your ability to win a Super Bowl at nil. I think, and I mentioned those 3 big powers in the NFC, Little Alex, Cody, and Dan. I think you're right there as number 4 and potentially challenging for those top 3. This roster has been on fire lately, literally, if you've seen the videos today. But no, seriously. I mean, it's for some reason, Michael Thomas continues to get credit with his rating. So obviously, unfortunately, he's very good. The only big question mark, and it is a huge question mark, is you have very little cap flexibility. Now, Madden's going to do us all a big favor and grant us this huge influx in cap space like they did in the last cycle over the first couple of seasons, which should help with some of these young guys like Garner Johnson and Williams that you'll be looking to resign, I'm sure. But it's still going to leave you totally cap strapped unless, you amnesty one of these really good players. There's a question at quarterback. I think Jameis is good. Is he the guy for you? I mean, that's up for you to decide moving forward. But for getting them 31st in the lottery, I would have put them 32nd personally. But nevertheless, it's, I guess, a pretty good roster to inherit at 31.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be way, way worse. But, yeah, it's... I honestly haven't even looked at the contracts yet. Like, I have not started a solo franchise yet. Luckily, I have all sorts of time to do so, but I'm going to have to see who I'm amnestying and just go from there. Again, as you were saying, the influx of cash helps a lot. But, I expect to be competitive. I have confidence in myself to, at least... I don't see myself as some, like, trash user anymore who, like, can't beat certain guys. So, like, I expect to at least be kind of competitive in the regular season, but... we'll see how it goes as far as my ability to, compete in the playoffs in this NFC. We'll just have to see. Gamble's Tampa Bay Bucks. This is going to be probably the best roster in the game, at least, early on in the cycle. They come off of having won the Super Bowl. All 22 starters on both sides of the ball come back. Tom Brady's going to be a problem. They got all sorts of offensive weapons, especially in that wide receiving core. Defense really, really strong, too. And fast, especially. That linebacking core is really fast, which I do think will help a lot this Madden. obviously wasn't super successful last cycle, didn't do a whole ton. How do you see Gamble doing this cycle?
Yeah, this roster is great. The team's great. Yeah, it's so fun to talk about Tom Brady year after year after year. Fortunately, Madden will make him like a 72 overall by season 2 of our CFM, which is dumb in itself. But personally, I don't see Gamble just in the user sense as a major competition because this is a really good division. But he's going to have some fun. I'm pretty jealous of the weapons that he has, the team that he's going to have so much fun playing this game. Even if he's losing, he's going to be able to throw the ball, run the ball with all these great players. And this is one of those teams where it's perfect for a user like Gamble, who's not bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. Gamble is, again, we talked about maybe those kind of lower tier users. He's one of the better of that group.
Sure.
And he could probably knock off any one of you guys. I mean, we saw him compete in that AFC South division, just couldn't quite get over the hump, but he was, on upset alert more often than not, it felt like, against the rest of those guys there. But I mean, he's going to have so much fun, win or lose, playing with his team. There's a reason they went number 1 overall in the team draft, and that's exactly why.
Yeah, Gamble's going to have a fun, at least early part of the cycle, as you were saying. Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see, his motivation for Live Madden 21 was just, force-feeding Adonis Morrison, getting him those stats. Now that he has kind of like a more balanced and more veteran-laden wide receiving core, I'll be interested to see how his passing game transitions, as he's kind of like looking more all around the field instead of trying to force feed one guy. That may help him out potentially, especially given how the passing game is in Madden 22. He should be able to scheme guys open, even given his, potentially questionable abilities. He should be able to be pretty successful offensively in certain games. So we'll see how he's able to do. I will never sleep on Gamble. He almost beat me once in Madden 21. I had to kick a field goal as time expired to win that game. And with that Tampa Bay Bucks roster, man, it's going to be real tough to deal with. Final thoughts in this division before we move on. We all got 2 more left, I think.
Yep. Flying through it here. Well, not really flying, but Connor, I would say that this division is yours, and I know the humble host will beg to differ, but the fact is that you are, at least over the last cycle plus, pretty far and away the most accomplished user here. Obviously, Morty has plenty of accomplishments in his trophy case. I can't wait to watch Morty with his team, where I get to play him season 1 in that 17th crossover game, which I'm really looking forward to because it's always fun playing Morty. He's a great player and mixes it up, and it's just usually a fun game to go against because it's going to be a fight and you got to bring your A game. Again, I go back to Finn is a huge question mark because I absolutely believe that he is my breakout guy. We're going to have the season 1 poll where we pick our breakout user. This is the easiest choice for me. It's Finn because he's going to put in the work. Mm-hmm. And again, like you said, he understands the game. Can he put it all together? He could knock you off. I mean, he could. But to me, it'd be a huge surprise if anyone other than yourself won this division. What do you think? I mean, do you think you really? I mean, if you're being honest with yourself, you think you got this in the bag?
No, not in the bag. No, if you put it like that, I think, see myself as the favorite just in terms of how Madden 21 went. Frankly, I was pretty successful against Morty specifically. That was a good matchup for me. Finn, we don't know, as you were saying. We don't know. And then Gamble's Gamble. Again, that's no disrespect, but he's not winning the division. So we'll just have to see. I think it's the classic question of, I had a crazy good roster last cycle that, helped me out a lot. Now that I don't have that, what will I be able to do? I do think I've made improvements. I do think I've made gains as a user, since early on in my Better League career. I've definitely gotten better, but is it enough to, deal with 2 very strong users in Finn and Morty? We'll just have to see. But, I would like to think that I'm the favorite in this division season 1. But it's unpredictable. Would it shock me if Morty won? No. Would it shock me if Finn won? No. So we'll just have to see. Second to last division here, the AFC West. And this is honestly a pretty interesting one too, in my opinion. Again, I keep saying it, Madden 22. I really don't think we have a ton of like dog divisions. They're all pretty interesting in one way or another. We start off with, I don't know why Phil keeps picking the Broncos, but he does. He finds himself in Mile High Stadium once again. This is a team that he's won Super Bowls with, but that feels like the prehistoric age at this point. That was a long, long time ago. Had kind of off and on success in Madden 21. He was actually very successful against Alex's Chiefs. I think he had a winning record against him for the cycle, and he did make the playoffs twice, or 3 times, excuse me, but he was unable to win a single game in the playoffs. How do you think Phil's cycle is going to go here in the AFC West?
Yeah, so a little bit salty with Phil for taking the Broncos. I was pretty excited. That was my number one to introduce myself to Denver, I guess, a little bit. But nevertheless, I mean, it's nice to have consistency with somebody who's been there, even if it makes absolutely no sense for somebody that lives on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. But still, his roster, again, this is one of those teams that it just – I mean, it's a good secondary. It's a solid defense. And the pass game, I'll say this. For as bad as it seems with the passing offense, the throw power for Teddy Bridgewater at 85 is not as dire as we all thought, as we've alluded to already. And then the accuracy is solid. He's got some speed, which is helpful. But the 2 wide receivers, well, really 3 or 4 wide receivers. He's got 4 good wide receivers. Hamler, we know, has the speed. Jerry Jeudy is young and very good. Cortland Sutton is nothing to scoff at. And then you've also got Tim Patrick, who's a decent 3rd or 4th wide receiver in his own right. And then, of course, we know how he loves Noah Fant and the tight ends. Mm-hmm. There are weapons on this offense. They're there. Can he put it all together to win this division season 1? I think so. I mean, I really do. I think he could. Do I think he will? Who knows? But still, it's there. It's everything's laid out for him to get to the playoffs consistently this cycle. Finally, get back to that high, consistent level that he was at with the Broncos years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you said who knows. That's pretty much how I see this entire division, honestly. Like all 4 of these users in terms of their ability to, I guess, compete long-term within this division. But, Phil, we know what type of scheme he's going to have, as you were saying. He loves those 2 tight end sets, and Noah Fant's going to be a problem, especially given that's one thing that I don't think either of us have mentioned until now. The tight ends are just eating so far this Madden. I don't know what it is, but they're pretty unguardable unless you like specifically scheme to stop it. Excuse me. So that'll definitely help out Phil. I think he's capable for sure. He's definitely very capable. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be a pretty decent Madden quarterback, as you were saying, and again, would it shock me to see him win this division? Not at all. It's just a matter of, again, we've both said how stacked this AFC is. Once he makes it to the playoffs, do I see him beating Austin? No. Do I see him beating pick an AFC North member? No. Like, it's just, that's the kind of level we're talking about. So it'll just be interesting to see whether he's able to compete at that level. But he'll definitely take the division at least once or twice throughout the cycle. I would not be shocked at all. Moving on to your guy here, Payne. I left the numbers on the slide. My bad. But yeah, Payne takes over the Kansas City Chiefs. Will he be more successful than Alex was? Will he actually, win more than one playoff game? We will have to see. But he gets just an absolutely stacked roster, a roster that I think is really, really going to serve him well in this Madden, given Tyreek Hill's 99 speed, given just, everything about Patrick Mahomes is just going to, be just incredible to use in Madden 22. And I'll just be interested to see, how committed he is. I guess you can probably talk about that more than me. How do you see your guy doing here?
Well, unfortunately, I don't get to see Payne's smiling face at work anymore. But I know that he's so excited about this team. He was talking about the possibility of it leading up to the team draft. And for him to land the Chiefs at like 11 or 12, we thought was crazy to even imagine. But nevertheless, here it is. It comes down to a couple things, I think, for Payne. His defense is not going to be very good. He's never been an elite defensive user. He's certainly not terrible, but he's definitely not, I wouldn't put him in the upper half of the league. The big question for me is how does he handle Mahomes? Because obviously Mahomes has plenty of great ratings. He's a great quarterback. He doesn't have that easy mode. And that is just, unfortunately, that's a huge difference. between having that and not having it, I would not be surprised to see a re-roll right off the bat to start the cycle, which sounds silly when you're talking about a player that good. But when you think about the possibility of either set feet or gunslinger and the difference that really makes, it's sad. It's that remarkable, but it is. So if he can get that, and then the other big part of it is limiting the interceptions. He throws a lot of picks, forces the ball at times. He's got to cut down on that. This is the perfect Madden to do that if he can scheme up some open routes, which is not really all that difficult to do, especially when you've got the talent that he does. If he can do that on a consistent basis, then we could be talking about a team that can make some noise. To me, it's one too many question marks in a division with a couple of guys that have proven themselves, season in and season out. I don't really see him competing on a consistent basis, but I would love to be proven wrong. And I think he can prove me wrong if he puts in the work and is smart with his choices.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be dangerous game in and game out for sure. He's someone that, none of these other three users can sleep on necessarily in terms of their matchups. It's about the consistency, game in and game out. Like, do I trust him to put a full season together as much as I trust these other three users? Not necessarily. But Chiefs roster is dangerous. If we do see that re-roll that you were talking about, and if it goes in Mahomes' favor, then that is probably the best quarterback in the league. You can argue maybe Lamar Jackson just purely based on the mobility, but that's going to be just a tough quarterback to have to stop it for any of these other three users. And, Payne, I do think, the easier offense, just the fact that the passing game is just straight up easier this Madden has the potential to help him a lot, especially given how many weapons he has, maybe easier to kind of scheme those guys open and wait for them to get open from Payne's perspective. So if he, were to take a leap up as a user, maybe be one of those breakout user candidates, it wouldn't shock me. There are no demons in this division, right? There's no one who's like, instant Super Bowl contender. Phil, Justin, or Kumar. I don't think you can say that about any of them. So, Payne has the potential. We'll have to see how it goes for him. Justin's LA Chargers, obviously the only reason he has them is because of wanting to screw over Hero Austin, so that's just tough. You could have gotten the Ravens, Justin. I don't know what all that was about, but he takes over this LA Chargers team. He has been, I don't want to just shit on Justin this whole time. He has been a very, very good regular season user for the past, 2+ cycles. He's consistently been a threat for that one seed, despite the fact that he's been in bad divisions. He's been able to beat Cody most of the time. He's been able to, get a couple quality wins against other great users. So he is dangerous. It's just a matter of, in this Madden, will he be as much so, given how predicated it is towards the passing game, and we know how much he loves the run. We'll just have to see. But how do you see Justin's cycle going?
So I feel like it's almost cruel for him to get this team, because this is the perfect team for Justin to continue his mediocrity. Because this is not a run first game. It's not a run first team. He's a run first user. If he can figure out the pass game, then he can make some noise. But I'm not holding my breath on that he becomes an elite passer overnight. This is just the perfect team for him to either win the division or grab a wild card spot and go one and done, or maybe pull one win off here and there and just continue that same level of just teetering on elite. And, it's nothing necessarily against him as much as I would like for it to be something against him. There's just so much elite talent across the league, and specifically across the AFC, that it's going to be next to impossible, in my opinion, to see him get back to a Super Bowl to brag about losing again. I do think that he is going to be a consistent playoff contender at the very least, and I think he'll probably make the playoffs more often than not. But I do not expect him to even make a conference championship game this cycle.
Yeah, I mean, the only, you say he'll make the playoffs more often than not. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but we've said that about a lot of AFC teams at this point. Given
True.
You've got Austin and King, potentially Cam if he can keep the preseason success going. You've got the entire AFC North. They're all playoff contenders, so it's there's only so many slots. Obviously the extra wild card helps, but I could see Justin being one of those guys where I think he he made the playoffs every season last cycle. I don't think that's going to be the case this cycle. I really don't. Like, if Phil or Kumar are able to sneak up on him and get the division, like, I just don't know if he's going to have the consistency to be able to just put forth those playoff seasons, year in and year out, especially given, as you were saying, the roster doesn't necessarily do him a ton of favors, especially with the second overall pick. He really could have done so much better for himself. So, I mean, that's no discredit. Justin's like a capable user. He's not trash, despite what people say about him, but he is also not the user where I think he's going to make. I just don't think he's making the playoffs every year. I think we'll see him miss it potentially once or twice here. We'll just have to see as far as Justin goes. Move on now to your division mate from last year, Kumar. Again, with 28th pick at the I was about to say Oakland, the LA Raiders with their new beautiful stadium. And Kumar is someone who I don't know what to make of him. He looked really, really impressive last season. Made it to the divisional round. Really played well against Dan, despite the fact that he lost that game. He was really just throwing dots all over the place. That was a beautiful, beautiful game to watch. But obviously, you've played him a lot more than I have. I think I've only played him once ever. So, talk to me about Kumar. What do you think?
Well, yeah. First of all, it'd be a huge surprise if there was a third team in LA now. But I do think that the Vegas Raiders, with Kumar's leadership, sorry, I just had to. No, they were at one point, I think, LA. Anyway, I do think that Kumar made incredible strides at the end of last cycle. We all saw it. I mean, he had Zach Bean, who I think had either set feet or gunslinger, along with Hot Route Master, and he was really good with that combination by the end of the cycle. He had it going on, and he crushed me at least once, if not twice, using that. Now he's coming and he's inheriting a bad team. He's got the weapons, though, offensively. So I think this actually plays into his hands pretty well, because in year one, just about everybody is probably going to struggle defensively. So those struggles that he would have because of the roster maybe a little more hidden than normal. And he's got the weapons to go toe-to-toe with just about everybody offensively. Derek Carr should be getting some bonus points here over the next few weeks if he keeps performing how he is. So that also bodes well for him. He is a sneaky candidate to – I mean, I know you just said it. We talked about so many guys that can make the playoffs. It seems like don't be shocked if Kumar grabs one of those spots. That's all I'm saying. Don't be shocked. Do I think he makes the playoffs every season? No. Do I think he wins the division? Probably not. But wouldn't surprise me to see him grab a 6 or 7 seed 2 or 3 times this cycle and maybe get a win or two in the playoffs.
For sure. It's going to be really interesting. Obviously, Henry Ruggs is going to continue to be a factor, push those safeties back. And CMAS just mentioned, Darren Waller is going to be really, really tough to stop as well, especially given how the tight ends are looking this Madden. Kumar, again, a strong passing user, not always, but when he's fully locked in, he's absolutely a strong passing user, and he'll be able to get these, get these hot dots flying all over the place. And another thing about Kumar is he's been playing this Madden a lot. He's been I've noticed challenging a lot of guys to practice matches. He's doing pretty well in that regard. So he's about as locked in as anyone, I think, heading into this cycle. Even though again it's in a month, but. Final thoughts. I think this is a really interesting division. Final thoughts on this division before we move on to the NFC West. Excuse me.
Yeah, my instinct is to pick Phil in this division. I think that he has started to get back to where that point where he was when he was one of the better users in this league. I do think that his team currently is a little bit better than the Chargers. Just in the way that this game is playing. I'm looking forward to that rivalry between Phil and Justin. I think that's going to be a fun one. We'll get a lot of noon games with Phil being obviously across the pond and Justin door dashing every 2 weeks for an hour. So should have plenty of time there during the middle of the day to get these games in on the Better League Network. Those are going to be fun. I'd love to see Payne make some noise. Not expecting it, but I really, really do think that Kumar can absolutely compete for this division. I maybe not win it. Maybe, I mean, it wouldn't be a huge shock if he did, but I think he's going to knock off Phil and Justin more than a few times this cycle.
Yeah, my pick's actually Kumar early on, and
Wow.
all of what you were saying about Phil's definitely correct for sure. But I was just really really impressed by Kumar late on, especially in that stacked division, in that stacked NFC West Madden 21. I think he did a really great job acclimating himself. Definitely he had a bit of a rough start as far as his results went, but I think he's just gotten a lot better, and I see I see a level of motivation in him, and part of it is Justin didn't get the game until recently, but I do see him playing the game way more than any of these other three guys. So I think that has to matter at some point. I think he has the desire to get better. So would it shock me if Phil wins? No. Would it shock me if Justin wins? No. It would shock me if Payne won, but he'll at least be competitive in those games. But I do really think that Kumar's my pick to win this division season one. That may come back to me if he looks stupid, but I could very easily see it happening here. Moving on now to the final division, probably honestly the least interesting division in terms of I think we know who the number one is every season, but the NFC West here, Caden's Arizona Cardinals, technically the greatest regular season user in Bear League history, is the highest winning percentage. Obviously, he was the Seahawks for a little bit, and I think it was Madden 19. Let me know, Dan, if you're still here. I need my Better League historian on that one, but he was very, very successful for 2 seasons and then dipped out. He is back now with this Arizona Cardinals team, which is going to be very, very fun to use. Very solid roster here, especially on offense. Kyler Murray's going to be a problem. He's got a really, really strong receiving core as well. How do you see Caden doing with the Cardinals?
Yeah, no, so that was Madden 20 where he got off to such a great start and then didn't really pan out in the playoffs, and he wound up eventually leaving. I have pretty high expectations for him. Everybody's saying this is just Cody's division, and yes, Cody, I would put it far and away as the favorite. But do not be surprised if Caden wins double-digit games season one. It would not shock me in the slightest. You mentioned he's got a fantastic team, good young quarterback, tons of weapons, and the defense is not that bad. We all saw Chandler Jones get 5 sacks in the first week of the NFL season. And, if the Cardinals can keep winning, this roster is only going to get better by the time that we start. I really think that he's a candidate to surprise some folks. He's one of those breakout guys that has obviously had the success in the Better League in the past, but could continue that here moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying all through the team selection show, don't sleep on Caden, don't sleep on Caden. I just don't think he's at that Cody level necessarily. But yeah, this Arizona Cardinals team's definitely going to be a competitive one, season one. He's a very, very solid user. I think I'm just curious with him, and this is legit. I don't know, I just haven't seen him play in so long, but I remember him being super, super pass heavy in Madden 20. He loved those outside runs, those stretches, and I was really curious. You were saying how the run game's kind of toned down this Madden, how it maybe predicated more towards the passing game. I'll just be curious to see how he's able to adapt to that. He's obviously a quality user. You don't have a 83% win percentage by accident. He's obviously a quality user, but regardless, we'll just have to see how he's able to do. It's not a tough division, but in a division with at least one tough user here in Cody. Right. So it'll just be interesting. Cody Youngson, obviously, with his LA Rams, he won the Super Bowl season 1 in Madden 21. Will he be able to do it again in Madden 22? We'll have to see. I was more excited about this Rams roster heading into the cycle than I am now. It looks like a lot of those just defensive goons they have out there maybe aren't as effective as you would have thought maybe heading into the cycle before we started playing the game. But regardless, we know Cody. He's as dedicated as anyone. He's grinding about as much as anyone. He will be definitely a Super Bowl contender season 1. It's just a matter of, will he be that guy coming out of the NFC? We'll just have to see. What do you think about Cody's Rams team?
Yeah, so I can't wait to see what he decides to do as far as these trades, because he's talked about it at length that he wants to move one or both of these just great, phenomenal players that he has defensively in Darnold or Ramsey. And I would expect him to follow through on that. Mm-hmm. I've been given no indication otherwise. And I think that if he can do that and he can bring in what he really, I know he wants the gunslinger quarterback, but I would be very surprised if that winds up playing out. If it does, he instantly becomes the favorite in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl. If he's not already, I think he's right there. I do think that maybe he's not the favorite currently. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what he does early on in the cycle as a GM to form his team for the future. But we all know that he is far and away the favorite in this division. And because he's got a fairly easy division, should be able to get his development going very well too, and become an absolute force to be reckoned with long term.
Yeah, definitely. The Rams roster obviously isn't the youngest, but we know he'll be able to keep rebuilding this team, keep debbing through the draft or free agency, what have you. I do expect. I do expect him to be able to kind of like retool the defense as they age out, because the Denver aggression is probably going to hit him pretty hard too. But that's something that he'll look to, I think, prioritize moving forward with that LA Rams team. You were mentioning the gunslinger. We know that no one covets gunslinger more than Cody, so he'll be aggressively trying to get a guy with gunslinger. So does that mean he trades Ray Donald to Ramsey? We'll have to see. Something tells me yes, as you were saying. So we'll just have to see how that impacts his defense moving forward. But yeah, clear favorite in the division for sure. Ryan's San Francisco 49ers. We know we're going to see a lot of Trey Lance. He's fired up about Trey Lance in real life. That's who we're going to see as the rookie quarterback over there. Obviously, much like all four of these teams, a very, very solid roster to build off of, especially with that rookie quarterback. So it's just a matter of how competitive he's going to be able to be. We know that, he was up and down, I'll say charitably, as a Madden 21 user. He did have some flashes where he looked pretty good, but overall just wasn't able to string it together. How do you see him doing this cycle?
So I see Ryan as, I think, you see Tate for this cycle. I really see him as growing his game. I don't think he's going to challenge for the division by any means, but I do see him making that jump from a lower tier user to a clear middle tier user who can, compete for a playoff spot pretty consistently. He has been putting in the work. He's really excited about his favorite team, I know, and he's got a great team. I think it's going to ultimately come down to his own mental state as far as week in and week out, going out there and bringing it. I know where we're at currently with a preseason tournament and these games that are, you play once every 3 or 4 days at most against another better league user. It's pretty easy to lock in, for 24 hours a week, or not 20, for 1 hour a week on a BL game. It's pretty easy to do, but that totally changes once we actually start the cycle up and you're playing 3 or 4 games a week. And I do think that could weigh on him potentially. If he's able to lock in, though, week in and week out, wouldn't surprise me at all to see him become, a 500 or better user by any means.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I am maybe a little less optimistic about his ability to compete than you are, but I mean, that's, not to discredit Ryan, especially with this roster, he's definitely going to be relatively competitive, at least compared to last cycle. And the fact is, again, this is not the best division in the world. We know that Cody is going to be, 2 probably almost guaranteed losses. But other than that, if he beats Caden, wouldn't shock me. If he beats Chap, wouldn't shock me. So he may be able to get something going here in this division. And, maybe if the stars align, if everything, balances out, he maybe pushes for a wild card spot at some point. We'll just have to see. He's just never winning the division. It's Cody's division. Move on now to the final of 32 teams. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sticking around here. I think we're at like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So this is one of the longer pods we've done in a while, but that's what happens when you get me and Ben in the booth. Chapter roles, Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, again, we know that the roster has some flaws. We know that there's some stuff they need to build on. A couple of really strong defensive pieces like Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams, but other than that, it's a bit questionable. Russell Wilson's going to continue to be a threat, at least for the early part of the cycle before it regresses. How do we see Chap doing with this Seattle team?
Yeah, I'm concerned for Chap. I mean, we've kind of seen him over the last 3 cycles really just kind of slowly regress, and now he's to the point where he is pretty clearly a bottom tier user, which is disappointing because for those of us who have been around for a while, we know the chap at one point was a consistent playoff team. I haven't necessarily seen much from him. That could be a good thing. Maybe he's out there grinding and we are all unaware. I'd say probably the more realistic expectation is that he's just not really 100% into it. You've got Russell Wilson, who, even though he is up there in age, he's going to still be good for at least 3 or 4 seasons. I mean, like, very good. Potential re-roll worthy. Again, we get back to that X factor possibility for set feet leader gunslinger that unfortunately makes such a huge difference out there on the field that he may decide to go ahead and go for it. Personally, I probably would if I were him. But it's a fun offense. There's no doubt about that. Defensively, obviously, you've got Jamal Adams and a couple of other solid pieces. Obviously, Bobby Wagner. Other than that, it doesn't look great. I'm worried about his defense moving forward, and I don't think that we're going to see a ton of success from him this cycle. But I would love to be pleasantly surprised and see him get back to where he was.
Yeah, I think I agree with you here as far as like how I see Chap as a just user within this division here. I kind of see him as the 4th place user more often than not. That's not to say he can't beat out Ryan for 3rd sometimes, but as far as what I expect to happen, yeah, that's kind of how I see this division going. The good thing about that Seahawks roster is you're going to have a guaranteed deep threat in Metcalf for the entirety of the cycle.
Yep.
Tyler Lockett is not young anymore, but he's not old either, and that's another just fast, decent route runner that you can use. So he's got 2 just really solid deep threats right out the gate. Wilson's definitely got the arm to get it to him, so that'll help. But yeah, overall, it'll probably be a bit of a struggle cycle for Chap. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Any final thoughts? We'll wrap up with our Super Bowl predictions at the end, but any final thoughts in this division before we do that?
Yeah, no, I do think, again, going back to Caden, prepare to be surprised. For those of you that are not familiar with him, he is a good player and he's got a great team. I would, if I know we've said this over and over, I would expect him to make the playoffs at least in season 1, and then I think he can build on that and become really one of the better next tier users in the NFC, consistently battling for a playoff spot. Again, I do expect Ryan to be much better than he was last cycle, but ultimately this is Cody's division, and Cody is going to be focused on getting his team right for the playoffs because he's in that echelon of user where, yes, the regular season matters, but ultimately it's how did you do in the playoffs and did it translate to a ring or multiple rings. So I hope that Cody doesn't get too much of an advantage playing in the division, but he very well may become one of the best teams in this league pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And as you were saying, more so probably than anyone else in this league, at least based on how this divisions look so far. Cody's season's really going to start in the playoffs. It is what it is. You can pretty much write him in pen with a playoff berth every single season with that Rams team. But if Caden's competitive, wouldn't be shocked. Ryan may push Cody and Caden occasionally, but we'll just have to see how that goes. Again, I'm a bit less optimistic than you are, but you could very easily be right about him. We'll just have to see. That does it for the divisions. Again, thank you all so much for sticking around, and thank you, Ben, for doing this with me. Excuse me. This is a lot of fun. It's also fun when I start misspeaking every sentence after like 2 hours of doing this. Y'all know how it is with me by now, but you can see the full divisional breakdown there. Again, thanks, Cody, for making this graphic. Before we go, Ben, I'm just going to ask you, what are your way too early Super Bowl predictions for season 1?
Oh boy, this is always fun. Okay. Out of the NFC, I think that we have got, obviously Cody could get there, but I think it's going to come down to Dan and little Alex, and I would give the slight nod to Dan. Out of the AFC, I know it's an easy cop-out to pick Austin. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and just take the easy cop-out and pick Austin. A rematch of our past Super Bowl that we just had at the end of the cycle. I know, really going out on a limb there. I will pick Dan to repeat on the new cycle and win the first Super Bowl of this cycle.
Well, we know Dan owns Austin in the Super Bowl. We know this. It's Better League history, ladies and gentlemen. I gave my prediction once in the team preview show. I gave it once last night when I was announcing with Taint, and I'll give it a third time. I think it's going to be CMAS versus Cody. CMAS just based on the, I think, massive roster advantage he starts out with over the rest of the AFC. And then Cody, I think the NFC is going to be maybe more competitive. Not as far as like the overall conference, but in terms of like, you could see Cody winning, you could see Dan winning it, you could see, little Alex, Chase, even if we see like prime Chase coming back. But I do think it's gonna be Cody, and then I have CMAS. No, I'm lying. I have Cody taking it. I'm gonna be an NFC homer, just like I was an AFC homer last cycle. So Cody over CMAS is mine. Ben, thanks so much for doing this. Any just final thoughts on the league, the cycle, whatever, before we wrap this boy up?
Well, thank you for putting this together. It's been a blast. I know
Totally
went a little bit longer, but everybody can appreciate the content with this long wait that we have. I just want to encourage everybody to keep working on trying to get better at the game, even though we aren't starting actual competitive games yet, because once we hit the ground running, because we're starting so late, if you get left behind, there's not going to be as much parity as there normally is season one. These guys will have been playing this game for a few months, so keep putting the work in and getting better. And that way, come season one, you're ready to go out there and compete.
Definitely, man. It's gonna be a real fun cycle. Again, I do think the conferences are pretty balanced. The divisions are pretty balanced. It's gonna be a fun one. I could really see like most divisions going like a number of different directions here to start out. So we'll have a fun cycle. Again, it's going to be a long wait. Hopefully there's going to be some more content, from Better League Network, maybe from myself, CMAS, the Seattleites eventually, whoever else. But we'll just have to be patient here, wait and see. And as you were saying, continue to get better at this Madden, because it's, full pedal to the metal once we get started. But thank you so much, Ben, for joining me. Along with Ben, I'm your, normal podcast host here, Connor Rice. Thank you all so much for joining here with the Better League Network. Peace.